I worked the late shift at a neighborhood grocery store for almost 3 years. We dealt with shoplifters and angry customers before, and I believed that if something serious ever happened, I would know what to do. It was just after 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the dinner rush was over. Only 2 checkout lanes were open. I was helping a man buying milk and bread, while other cashiers finished with a woman carrying cat food and canned soup. The manager had gone into the office for a while. The stock clerk was somewhere in the back. The front doors opened and 2 men walked in. One grabbed a shopping basket and the other kept his hands in his pockets of his hoodie. They split up. The man with the basket wandered through the snack aisle. The other stayed near the entrance, watching us instead of the shelves. Something felt off. I noticed because every time I looked up, he looked back. The customer at my register paid and left. For a few seconds, the store was quiet. Then the man by the entrance pulled out a handgun. He pointed it towards the ceiling and shouted for everyone to stay where they were. The second man dropped the basket and ran straight towards my checkout. He leaned over the counter and told me to open the register. I froze. He slammed his hand onto the conveyor belt so hard that the divider bars bounced onto the floor. My hands could not stop shaking. I entered the code and opened the drawer. He started grabbing bills with both hands. He wanted larger bills underneath the tray too. I fumbled with the release catch because I could barely feel my fingers. Behind him, I saw the first man keeping the customers together near the exit. The woman with the cat food was crying, and an older man stood with both hands raised. Nobody said a word. The robber looked back at his partner only for a second. That was when I heard another sound. The office door had opened. Our manager had heard the yelling and stepped onto the sales floor without knowing what was happening. The armed man turned immediately. He pointed the gun straight at him. I remember how quiet the store became. The manager stopped walking when the robber ordered him to get on the floor. He did. For several seconds, nobody moved except the man emptying the register. Suddenly, the gun went off, and there were a couple of screams, and I looked around to see who they had shot. The noise inside the store was far louder than I could have imagined. The bullet had hit a display behind the manager. I don't know whether it was meant as a warning shot or not, but chips and cardboard flew across the aisle. The robber cursed at his partner to hurry. He grabbed the last handful of cash, and both men ran outside. The automatic doors opened for them, and away they went. The manager was the first to react, and he locked the front doors while another cashier called 911. Police arrived within minutes, but the robbers had disappeared. The security cameras showed their faces, yet neither man was identified that night. If I remember right, they eventually caught the robbers several weeks later. I kept replaying the gunshot in my head, realizing how close I was to seeing somebody get shot. I left that job 2 months later, and I still refused to work at a cash register again. A few weeks ago, my husband and I stopped by a local grocery store to pick up some milk and beer. It was about 6:30 or 7 p.m. This was an upscale grocery store in a good part of town in North Carolina. I mention this because it makes the situation even stranger. Anyway, we were at the checkout and my husband realized that he had left his wallet in our vehicle. I offered to run out to the car and grab it. Seeing as the parking lot was well lit and there were people around, I didn't really think twice about it. Well, directly outside the doors to the store, there is sort of a breezeway that leads to a PetSmart and an office supply store. Again, very well lit. I happened to glance over as I was walking towards the parking lot, and there was a man standing there in the breezeway talking on the phone. He looked directly at me and yelled something. I assumed he was catcalling me because unfortunately that is something that happens, and I was wearing shorts at the time. I retrieved the wallet from the car and went to pass by the man again to enter the store, and he started yelling at me again and waving and making beckoning gestures. I couldn't quite understand what he was saying because he was too far away, but his tone was the same as other creeps yelling at me in the past, so I flipped him the bird as I entered the store. We checked out and I told my husband about it casually, not thinking anything of it. When we left the store, the man was gone. There's an alternate exit from the parking lot that this narrow strip of road leads to a bank and a gas station, and for some reason my husband took that exit. We both noticed a car parked the wrong way on the side of the road that turned on as we approached. Before we knew it, the car pulled in front of us, and it turned sideways to block the road, and the man from earlier got out. He was yelling and quickly approaching our vehicle. He jumped on the front of our car and started banging on the hood. My husband quickly threw the car in reverse, and the man ran to his car and started heading in the opposite direction, squealing his tires and trying to block us at the other exit. We managed to get there before him, and he was directly behind us driving like a maniac. he proceeded to follow us all around town as we tried to frantically lose him. A few times I thought he was going to rear-end us. I finally called the police, and they instructed us to drive straight to the station, and as we pulled in, he sped away. I still really wonder what exactly it is that he wanted. It had to be more than just a catcalling creep. He was almost frantic rather than angry, and afterwards I questioned whether we should have just heard him out. Neither of us were able to make out anything that he was yelling. Not that it matters, but he didn't look like a crazy person, dressed like he worked in an office and drove a Mercedes. It was so bizarre to see someone behave so aggressively right in the open like that. And of course, because I always questioned myself, I wonder if I shouldn't have been so rude and gave him the finger when I really didn't know what he was saying to me, and that could have possibly aggravated him even more. I was just creeped out and hypersensitive. I guess I'll never know the reason for that scary experience. Recently, I went into my local grocery store at around 6 p.m. just to grab a few things. I was by myself and the store wasn't super busy, but enough people were around. Normally, I'm not as aware of my surroundings because I like to listen to music while I shop, but this time I wasn't, and it honestly paid off. As I was walking through an aisle, I nearly bumped into a tall, heavy-set man who seemed to be in his 40s with a cart. I said, "Oh, sorry," and he said sorry too. But then he stopped, looked me directly in the eyes, slightly leaned in, smiled, and said, "How was your day today?" The way he said it immediately set off alarms in my head. For context, I'm a young adult male, and I also have a deep voice, so I thought once he heard me speak, he would back off. I gave a quick, "I'm fine" response and walked a few steps down. Seconds later, he was behind me. I noticed it, thought it was weird, but I figured that we were probably just headed towards the same area. I took a U-turn to another aisle without grabbing anything, and there he was behind me again. When I turned to look at him, he pretended to look at the groceries nearby, but didn't have anything in his cart. At that point, my heart was literally pounding, and I just felt something wasn't right. I thought I could be reading too much into it, but my intuition was screaming that this was a dangerous situation, and I did not have a good feeling about it at all. I left my cart and went straight to a cashier and quietly asked if she could walk with me because I felt someone was following me. She didn't immediately know who I meant, but she started telling me about her own encounter with the creep who'd been in the store before, a man who had told her he was from Australia. That line immediately brought me back a few months ago to this exact same store when my mom, sister, and I were loading my car. A man approached us with the same build, same look, and asked us about our day, saying he was from Australia and new to the area. My sister and I immediately got in the car because we both got super creepy vibes from him. My mom carried the conversation for a bit and then joined us. The dots connected, and I realized it was the same guy as many months ago. I was so thrown off that I couldn't even think straight about what else I needed to buy, so I just decided to check out early. He checked out at the exact same time and right next to me. The cashier offered to walk me to my car, and soon as we went to leave, he also left at the exact same time. We exited out of the far right door because I didn't want him to know where my car was. I also didn't know if he had a weapon on him. We walked around a bit to fake him out, and sure enough, he ended up having to walk to his truck, which was parked all the way on the opposite side of the store. That completely confirmed to me that he had been following me, because why would he exit the same door as me when his vehicle was on the other side? Thankfully, the cashier stayed with me until I got to my car safely, but the whole thing shook me up. I've always been socially anxious, but something in me just clicked, and I went straight to staff for help, and I'm glad that I ended up doing so. I live in a pretty small town. Not the kind of small town where everyone knows everyone, but small enough that a lot of crazy people end up living there. It's a town filled with dirt bike riders, ranchers, and a decent amount of drug dealers. The majority of people you meet are generally good, normal people, but I feel like it's necessary to bring it up to know a little bit about the area. At the time of the story, I was a senior in high school, and I'm a female. Since my brother was at college, my mom and I went shopping together for groceries often. My mom generally stays with the cart and the list, sending me off to grab things from the farther aisles and bring them back. My mom sent me to get some milk, which was across the store, so I started walking on the most direct route there, the one along the back wall. Just before I reached the dairy products, I got stuck behind a couple of carts and people trying to get around each other. Not wanting to be awkward, I just took a step back and looked around, as I wasn't sure where to get what I was looking for. There was a man, maybe in his early 20s or so, and he had on a blue and white striped shirt, and he had short brown hair, if I remember correctly. I really didn't think anything was weird about him when I first saw him, honestly. He had a bit of poor posture, and he seemed shy, but otherwise he appeared entirely normal. I had noticed him down the aisle next to where I was stopped, and our eyes met. I gave a friendly smile that people do when they accidentally make eye contact, and he returned it. Eventually, I got to the milk, and we soon finished shopping and got in the checkout line. He was in line ahead of us. I hadn't told my mom about the guy, as I didn't really think of it. I gave him a look of acknowledgement again and kept talking with my mom. There was a small break in our conversation, and the guy quickly asked us how we were doing. We said fine, and he said something to the effect of, good, in an awkward way. We didn't continue the conversation, so we went back to talking amongst ourselves, but my mom seemed much more uneasy. We made it out of the store, and were putting away our groceries, and I noticed a man pass us in his car, driving away, I suppose, and I started to feel easier. I put away the cart while my mom was in the car, and I felt a sudden spike of major creep out as his car passed me again. He was watching me as he passed, and smiling. I got in the car and told my mom what happened, including the part about having seen him in the store earlier, and we decided to wait in the car for a few minutes, then take an alternate route home. I'm not saying the guy was a creep for certain. Maybe he misinterpreted my first smile as a little more friendly than I had intended it to be, and he just wanted to be friendly back. But I keep thinking about the first time we made eye contact, and I've come to realize that our eyes didn't meet randomly. He had already been staring at me. I guess I'll never know if he was just shy or really was as creepy as I remember. I didn't ever feel like my life was in immediate danger or that he was a kidnapper or anything, but thinking back on that event, it just makes my skin crawl. A few years ago, I ran to the grocery store one evening because I was craving a specific dinner, and I realized that I was missing a few ingredients for it. It wasn't a long trip, just something that I expected to take about 10 minutes. Even so, I remember feeling a little uneasy before I got out of my car. I don't live in the best area, and after dark, the neighborhood changes. There are often people wandering around, some clearly struggling with addiction or looking for trouble, so I make it a habit to stay alert whenever I'm alone at night. The parking lot was almost empty. The only other person I noticed was a guy wearing one of the grocery store's polo shirts. He was sitting on the back of a sedan a short distance away. I assumed he was working there and was on his break, so I didn't pay much attention to him. As I started walking towards the entrance, I heard him whistling. It didn't even occur to me that it was directed towards me. I figured he was just passing the time. Then, after a few seconds, he called out, "What, you don't like my tune?" I didn't look back to answer. My first thought that he was just another guy looking for attention, and if I ignored him, he would lose interest. I kept walking towards the store, trying to act like I hadn't heard him. I was almost at the crosswalk leading to the entrance when I suddenly heard loud, rapid footsteps behind me. It instantly gave me a bad feeling. I spun around, instinctively gripping my keys between my fingers, and saw the same man quickly closing the distance between us. I started backing away as quick as I could without taking my eyes off him. The store entrance suddenly felt far away, even though it was only a few yards behind me. When he got close enough, he slowed down like nothing was wrong. He smiled and then asked for my phone number. Before I could even process that, he looked me up and down and said, "Those pants are super cute on you. You look so hot." I completely froze. Looking back, I wish I would have yelled or told him to leave me alone, but fear doesn't always let you react the way you imagine you would. I remember forcing the most awkward and shaky "no" that I've ever said before in my life, before turning and rushing the rest of the way into the store. The moment I got inside, the adrenaline hit me all at once. I ran to the nearest cashier, trying not to cry, and told her everything that had just happened outside. Her expression changed immediately. She called for a manager, and they both listened while I explained what had happened. Instead of looking surprised, they exchanged a frustrated look. That's when they told me that the man worked there. Apparently, he had a history of harassing female customers and making employees uncomfortable. From the way they talked, it sounded like management had already received multiple complaints about him, and they had been trying to find reason enough to finally let him go. Mine was apparently the last straw. I never found out exactly what happened after that, but from what the employees told me, my report got him fired.